Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to CVCISO Podcast number 78. I'm your host, Andy. Today, we are missing the founder of FR Secure, Evan Francine, but he's assured us he will be back next week. We do have Executive Director of Security Studio Academy, Dave Tuckman. And now he puts the Don and Jordan, the treasurer of...
Get yourself together, Andy. Come on.
Okay.
Keep it together.
That part again. He puts the Don and Jordan, the treasurer of the Minnesota CVCISO chapter. He makes TikTok videos from his car, and he also frequents Dollar Dog Sunday at a local casino. Jordan Money Darlington.
Male pillow fights.
Also, we have Joe Moldenauer. She is a newly promoted risk assessor for FR Secure, a pit boss at a casino, and also one heck of a great coworker. And also today we have a distinguished member of the CVCISO community, Lyle Melnychuk. He is the CEO and founder of Secure Shield. Couple of quick items. The CVCISO program begins Monday of next week, coming up right around the corner, but still time to prepare. It's a great New Year's resolution to spend some money on your own education and professional development. Also, we have the CVCISO budgeting course starting on the 5th, and a few more level 3 courses that we're pretty excited about starting next couple of months, and then also a new API security course out. Feel free to look me up for details, some amazing opportunities, and discounts available. That's it for coming events. Take it away, ladies and gentlemen.
Great sales pitch, Andy.
Woo!
Right on. Yeah,
Can't feel my legs.
He stumbled a little bit.
Go ahead,
I was
next.
just so excited talking about you, Jordan. You know, it's the highlight of my week.
Well, we are, because we record these and then they get published later. We are recording this one on January 2nd. So it is a Happy New Year to everybody. And we wish everybody, hope you had a great holiday season, great 2025. And we are super excited to kick things off going into the new year. We do have a special guest, Lyle Melnychuk, joining us today, who has been a member of the CVC community for quite some time now. It's been so long, we're trying to remember which cohort he was a member of. But Lyle participates on the advisory board and has been an active member for several years. A great guy. I'd like to, Lyle, if you could take a couple minutes to share with people who you are, where you are, and whatnot.
Sure. Hello. Thanks for having me on. My name is Lyle Melnychuk. I'm the CEO of Secure Shield. We are a Canadian-based cybersecurity consultancy in British Columbia, Canada, and we are strictly a vendor-agnostic cyber consultancy. We're not an MSP, mostly focusing on vCISO and risk assessment, incident response preparation, and compliance preparation. So we've been in the space for about, 2002 we started. Back in the day in break-fix world, and then moved to MSP, and then moved to cybersecurity-focused MSP. And for about the last 6 years, we've been strictly a cybersecurity consultancy.
And you had shared earlier that you guys are pretty specific on what types of organizations you prefer to work with.
Absolutely. We originally, you have that mission where you want to help everybody fix everything, and we still, in a sense, do that. We never say no to anybody. We give them as much advice as we can, but our main focus and our main ICP is in healthcare, legal, accounting / finance. We don't really look after banks or insurance companies. We just really focused after a little while, and but we'll never say no to anyone. It's an interesting direction to go, and a little bit of nonprofit also. But our point at the beginning is everybody is susceptible to risk. It's just a matter of what level. But we mainly focus on the larger verticals.
I just got a question. So you this has been kind of the same business, and you've just kind of converted it along the way.
Yes.
What when you converted from an MSP, what did how did that look? When you stopped doing MSP stuff.
Well, it's interesting. It was almost from the very beginning, I was very laser focused on what the industry was doing and what my peers, especially my peers, we all know where, because we do enough of our research on our own, we know where the industry goes and, what direction the market itself is going. What concerned me the most on what my peers around me were doing. Because at the end of the day, we started to see how back in the early MSP space, I think we've all experienced it. You have a couple of smart IT guys, you get an RMM, you get a PSA, and suddenly you're an MSP, right? Not really focusing on what the mandate of that MSP is. So then looked at that. So, okay, everyone's kind of jumping into space. What do we do now? How do we differentiate? Well, okay, we'll start the flat rate per seat model, which nobody in our area did. And then suddenly that became the thing, right? And then vendors and the channel were starting to jump on that. And there was really a lot of noise coming in that was forcing us to say, where are we at? What are we doing? Right. And then, understanding, there's a lot of malware attacks back in the day. There's a lot of the risks starting to happen. Maybe we need to shift cyber focus. So then we aligned more of a cyber focused MSP, that anything we built in our MSP business started from a cybersecurity footprint, right? Start with that, move out. Instead of MSP per seat, go that direction. So then once that happened, everybody started to do that. And it finally got to a point where, pardon the expression, but I just, got tired of looking for my piece of the grass to piss on, basically, and said, there's got to be a better way. And then lo and behold, I met a gentleman named Evan Francine and had some discussions and expressed my frustrations and told him kind of what I wanted to do. And he goes like, dude, that's it. Just do it. So I worked to scrap new MSP business, still kept some of the longest legacy clients that we have, because you don't want to chop off the hand that feeds you at the beginning, but then started to rebuild that business model. And, I always joke around saying, yeah, we're a 23-year-old startup is basically how we describe ourselves, because I completely burned it down. Right. And just started from scratch, cyber only, product agnostic. How do I do this? And what I found really interesting over the last few years is I haven't seen that trend, right? Yeah, there's DFR Secures and say us and other vCISO specific shops, but I really didn't see that push from, say, vendors and channels. There were always, here is a great opportunity to add vCISO to your MSP, say. Exactly. Here's a great tool for you, right? The platforms will allow you to do it, instead of stepping back and saying, where is the risk, right? Yeah, you need the technology, you need the blinky lights, but when we go in and say, yeah, what are your business outcomes in relation to that technology, right? If I go to a client and say, hey, you need a new server, right? It's not because it's out of warranty or the hard drive's at capacity or whatever. We're quantifying it as risk. And by being a non-MSP, I think has allowed us to be very neutral to the client. That, look, we're not trying to sell you anything. Right? I'm not telling you need a new server because I want to make 15 points on it, right? I'm telling you this because we see a point of risk here. That's the issue, right? And that point of risk is going to cause, you're going to lose money on it possibly. It's going to affect your bottom line. That's why we're having this discussion. And it's nice that we're not seeing that creep happen again. I'm not seeing it become, say, quote, a commodity. There's a little bit of traction I'm seeing, but not to a point where I got to go, oh my God, what do I do now? Like I used to do back in the MSP days.
Yeah. And I relate so much to that. You put it so great. I think sometimes, hey, just how you describe that industry, just everyone kind of, once it's in the channel, like everyone just does it. And then all of a sudden you're just adding things, just for the sake of adding things. And it takes some discipline to just say, no, I'm going to say no to that business because I want to stay focused on doing it this way. Because I think at the end of the day, that's like you're saying, it's better for the client anyway. Like you're more on their side, like helping them make great decisions rather than just peddling stuff,
and it's and Jordan, you and I have had this discussion lots, about I wouldn't say my anti-tool thought process or my anti-channel type views, but we've probably seen it this week. It's the end of the year. It's Christmas time. How many sales emails have we gotten? I've been absolutely spammed, right? And it's funny too, because it's from the current tools that I use. It's from my guys. Hey, Lyle, can you get 10 more licenses, for your CRM platform or whatever? It's like, okay, guys, no, please, don't, right? So we're still in that mindset, right? Of a revenue generating mindset when it comes to tools. And you're right, Jordan, I have to be very focused constantly about not getting sucked into that latest and greatest thing and it does it to me occasionally. It's like, oh my God, yeah, I can, use this as the next step to try and win over a client. Where I was like, whoa, wait, hold it a sec, right? We're doing okay now. Is this really good value, right? Am I really following the mission to help mitigate risk, right? A new $500 a month tool is not gonna help me continue that, right?
The other
Yeah, it's
challenge
very
I
hard.
see, the other challenge I see with that is how the prospects or the clients themselves have kind of been groomed into buying things. So it's almost like, for so many years having an MSP, they've just been told what to do. Here, hey, we got this new stack. Here's how much it costs. Let's implement it. And the other discipline part for how you're approaching it is like, you kind of try to make them own their own stuff too. I mean, like, you're there to help make decisions, but I've always liked the idea that this is their business. They need to make the decision. They need to, and they don't really want to. I've had some, business owners that are just like, just tell me what to do. And it takes a little discipline to be like, look, I'll give you guidance, but this is your business. This is your risk to make decisions on at the end of the day. And I think when you can get that message to land, they actually appreciate that, even though they might think of it as, oh man, so now I have to put some skin in the game here.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that too, a lot of times we are working with an existing MSP, right? So now we're that wedge, if we look at the pyramid, right? And you got your tier one, which is your MSP, and doing all the things that they have to do, which we absolutely, you still keep and you still have in place. We fall into that middle, right, of that business guidance between the MSP and say your auditor, or whatever vertical they're in, they have to use their compliance auditor or whatever. We're that wedge. So we perform the risk assessment, we're going through the checklists and stuff, and now we have to go, for example, to the MSP, right, and say, well, hey, we did our interview or we're doing our risk assessment, and what about the testing of the backups? Just real simplistic, right?
Mhm.
And then there's that, the accountability end of it, right? It's where you say, like, yeah, the owner just say do it, right? But the pieces of that, right, is holding other parties accountable also, who they are relying on, right? It's like fighting with an MSP saying that, we're not a third party vendor. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
They are clients buying stuff from you. You are a vendor. We need to do a third party risk assessment on the MSP, right? And they just, like, flames come out of their eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, like, absolutely the MSPs, like I've said this before, where it's like MSPs are near and dear to my heart. I've been a part of it for over 20 years, but I also know the dirty laundry that comes with that. And it's like there's a lot of MSPs that they don't know how to deploy their tools. They don't know how to do this stuff. They don't get held accountable a lot. And it's because they're doing business with these clients that just kind of say, tell us what to do. I don't know much about that. You just, if that's what your recommendation is, let's do it. And, but they're not testing the backups and stuff. And like, these things come out down the road when all of a sudden they don't have a good backup. And then it's like, and I don't like throwing MSPs under the bus all the time. Like I said, I love, it's near to me, but it is true. I had to tell a client once, like, it took some soul searching, but I was like, look, we are your biggest risk. We have the keys to the kingdom. Do you know that we're doing everything right? No, you don't. Do you know if we're checking the backups? Do you know, like, and I think it would be healthy for MSPs to do that, to just own it and just say, yeah, look,
That's right.
we're not doing half the things that you think we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of those businesses don't know what to ask or what standard to hold the MSP to. Did we lose you, Lyle?
Did the internet lines freeze in Canada?
Call the Prime Minister.
Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Your voice got louder.
Yeah, we can hear
You
you. but
sound different.
came off. I was going to ask you, like, what percentage of the clients that you work with have in-house IT or use an MSP?
There he is.
Woo, he's
Sorry.
back.
No worries.
Can you hear me?
I was worried.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to blame Jordan's Windows update.
Jordan.
Okay.
It's contagious.
Sorry, technical difficulties all around. It must be New Year's. Sorry, guys.
Did you hear the question?
Did you hear what I was asking?
No, sorry. Say that again.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. I was just curious for the amount of the clients that you serve, what percentage of them would you say have in-house IT versus an MSP to understand,
They're all MSPs. The majority of our verticals and our ICPs that we deal with, they're in the SMB space, so they're 100 seats or less.
Mhm.
It's just a sweet spot in our area, and it keeps the decision making really refined, which I like. It just becomes, when you're dealing with local government or something like that, which we can do, and I've done a little bit of consulting for that. It's nice when you have, say, a law firm with 5 partners, you got a couple office managers, right? A little bit of consolidation on the decision making makes everybody's life a little easier. So that's really nice space for us.
Mhm.
And then because of that, like Jordan says, like I'm 18 years in the MSP space. I totally know where they're coming from. So I'm very gentle and cognizant about feelings when it comes to that,
Sure.
because I've been there, and we hold our clients close to our chest, right? You don't want any anxiety or thoughts about losing your clients, right? So we really try to tell them, or not tell them, but reassure them that, look, we're engaged by the client for a specific task that really you're not, engaged to do. You're doing what you do best, and it needs to be done. 100% needs to be done. We're not telling the client that, no, you don't need this stuff. We can do it better for you. It's just filling that gap, that tier 2 gap, right? We're not worried about your cybersecurity stack. We're not worried about your EDR and your MDR and all that stuff. We're worried about, those administrative risks, right? We spend actually more time on the administrative end than the internal, external, and physical technical controls that the MSP would usually be doing, because they're doing a really good job at that, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
find most of the risk is falling on the administrative and the people end, right? Onboarding, offboarding, the policy set, people just throwing ChatGPT on their network because it's cool, right? That's where actually we spend a lot of our time. Probably the first more than a quarter of the initial 1-year engagement on our risk assessments is spent on the administrative end, because it's so out of whack, and they just don't understand that people are your biggest risk, right?
Sure.
Technology will do, I remember Evan saying, technology will just is easy to control. It will do what you tell it to do, right? People,
Mhm.
they don't want to take an extra step. They don't want to change their password every X amount of months. They don't want to use MFA. It takes too much time. It's a pain in the ass, right?
Mhm.
So that's really where we spend most of our time. So there's the word I'm looking for, but there's less anxiety really from the MSP end when we have an engagement, because they're fully aware that that's what they're doing really is not our main issue. We're not telling them to do anything off. And, at the end of the day, the risk assessment, it gives you the evidence, right? It's going to, it is nobody's fault, right? It's just, there's the evidence, right?
And if they're a good MSP, they'll appreciate that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not trying to replace their stack. You're just making sure, things are working.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, and if there's good synergy between yourself and the MSP, there's a good understanding that we're all there to serve the client, and there can be good collaboration there. Once trust and things like that can take place. Joe, were you gonna say something, or did you have a question?
Well, I kind of have a little bit of a question, because I'm not as understanding of MSPs like you and Jordan. You hold them near and dear to your heart. So the question I have is for your clients. I mean, is it in the contracts of certain things that are the MSP covers with certain businesses, and should businesses be more cognizant of those contracts and ask, have someone that has some, like a SME that can ask those questions of, okay, will the MSP handle this? Because I believe a lot of MSPs have ad hoc menu items. Am I right?
Some do. We didn't. When I was MSP. Everything was laid out and you paid X amount of dollars per seat and it included this stuff. And the only thing that was extra was anything that entailed the support of more than 5 users or any of their additional projects. So when we're doing a risk assessment and saying, do you do offsite backup, hypothetically? Yes, we do. Great. Are you testing them? I don't know. Well, I don't know means no, right? And then that's assigned to the roadmap for the MSP. That's just a knowledge thing, right? I don't think a lot of clients are aware to ask those questions, right? They just take it for granted. Now we could debate all day about whose responsibility is for that, on whether they should be upfront in their agreement to say, we're providing offsite backup for you, say for data, and you get screenshot verifications. That's our test. And once every 6 months, we're going to do a full DR test or, whatever. That I don't think that's rarely done. I don't know, Jordan, if you were doing that in your MSP days. I've already seen it's just not really it's not really the mandate, right? To do that. It's just, we're doing backup. Okay.
Yeah, I think too that some MSPs don't know what's in their agreement. As they've grown their business, they maybe started out with a template and then they've tweaked it, and so sometimes it's like, oh, you got this legacy client that is on the original agreement that you made, and you tweaked it over the years because you went to conferences and you started talking. So now every agreement, if you didn't go back and kind of true up all of them, then you got random agreements all over and you don't even know what's in your agreement. And so I do think it's important for the client to know that. And it's challenging because it's some of these, what an MSP provides so much stuff. It would be challenging for just a normal business owner to kind of understand everything that's in it. And that's maybe a value add to having someone like Lyle come in is that now they can evaluate this a little bit more and help explain, what's included. There's because the MSP industry, like Lyle said, like they kind of flock to the same thing. Like you go to these conferences and they pitch, there's why you bundle it, and now you're just charging per user, and there's very little detail of what tools they're using and what's included with all of them. And I think some of that is changing now. Some folks are maybe changing that model a bit, but there's still a lot that do that. So understanding, okay, yeah, you have a backup line item maybe, but what exactly is going on in there? You might have to get into the weeds with them to figure that out.
And I think that's a really good point you make, Jordan, about the client not understanding what is going on. And it just popped into my head that we just finished up a vCISO agreement, and probably 3 months in, we're having our monthly meeting, and the client says, well, our MSP sent us this email of all these changes they want to make to our agreement. It's going to go up like $700 a month. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of, I've done updates before back in the MSP days, but I've never thrown a $700 update, right? It seemed a lot, right? There was no seat increase. There was no real, there was no office expansion. There was no extra users or anything like that. And she says, can you take a look at it? I says, yeah, okay, sure. And it turned out it was all cybersecurity based. They wanted to add all of these extra tools because in their view, there's more risks out there that we need to protect you on. And the client's reading this going, wow, I have no idea what this means. I have no idea what they're talking about. Now they had really good wherewithal to say, this doesn't seem right. Right. And they took it upon themselves, but we were in the meeting and they just wanted us to take a look. I think any other circumstance, anybody else may have just signed it, right? Not really understanding, like you say, they don't understand what their contract is. They don't understand what their statement of work is. And to me, that's just confounds what I think the channel tries to do and what cybersecurity and information security in general is trying to do, right? They just stuff piles on and like, we'll use this best blinky light. Now we can do this. And now we can use this to stop because the bad actors are using AI now for all of their phishing attacks. We need to do this, right? Where instead of taking a step back, it says, well, let's start from an administrative end first. Maybe you're concerned about bad actors using AI to make phishing attacks look super real, which they already do, but it probably get worse. Why aren't we talking about internal process? Why are we talking about what kind of administrative controls we can put in and then worry about the technical stuff. Do we
Right.
need to educate, right? Simple to say, don't click on these links, but to start educating people from an administrative perspective about risk, and then let that lead to here instead of here's a new agreement. We're going to add these 5 fancy things and it's going to be this much.
Yeah. And to take that even further, I mean, if you think about like you go to an MSP conference and there are so many vendors, security vendors trying to, hitch up to an MSP to get a part of their stack. And so you're at this risk where it's like, is your MSP making the right decisions there? Or are they just going with whoever took them out to a steak dinner, or the cheapest one that just kind of opened up shop? And the amount of risk that you have with each one of those decisions, I mean, just look at the CrowdStrike thing. It's like I had clients calling me during that, like, do we have that? I'm like, no, we don't. Like, you don't know what we have. You don't know what we use. But our decision on what we use could impact your business dramatically,
Even the Ingram micro attack, right?
Right.
Like how many MSPs in the world were using Ingram Micro, right? For their N365 licenses? Like practically everybody.
Everyone.
If you're not on PAX 8, you're probably on Ingram Micro, right? And we got inundated with calls, right?
Yeah.
It's like, should I be worried? Should I be worried? And it's like, and random calls too. I said, well, who looks after your IT? So, oh, we have a company, an MSP or whatever. I said, well, you need to contact them and see where they're buying their licensing, right? So
there's
shows.
sorry, just before I lose these thoughts, what you're sharing kind of brought 2 thoughts to mind. One is, for the size of organizations you serve, if it's 100 seats or less, $700 can be a significant bump. And so it's like totally cool that they trusted you and reached out to ask. But it also shows how the MSP didn't really collaborate with you.
Yep. Yeah.
They just, said, hey, the other thing, and I do have another question, but if I cut anybody off or somebody wanted to say something, please go ahead. And I guess I didn't.
Sorry, before you do that, I'll just really add quick. That's why, you talk about collaboration with the MSP. And we learn, it's a learning process, as you're going through these assessments and you're talking to clients and doing introductions, and we tweak things all the time. I learned really early that the importance of bringing in the MSP into the meetings, the information security and cybersecurity meetings with the client. Now, I'm talking about the monthly meetings, the original introductions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lyle, we're really interested in what Secure Shield can offer. Can we have a meeting about it? So we'll book a meeting, have initial discussion, and if we want to move forward, we'll bring the MSP in. So they're totally engaged at the very, very, very beginning of what we were trying to do, just to kind of take the stress out, talk to them that, we are here for these specific reasons. We're not encroaching. We're not, trying to, bring up dirt that you're not doing a good job, all that kind of stuff. Right. Engage with them early. And that's been a really huge help. It just kind of takes the stress out and everyone can go and we can explain our process to them. We'll be doing these risk assessments and there may be technical tasks on a roadmap that need to be completed and they'll be offloaded to you. And, and we can work, together. You guys are the pros. You're the tech experts. You guys can facilitate those. We are going to work on the administrative stuff, maybe some of the physical security ends, policy, that kind of stuff. And then they can breathe a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. Right.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, and that's totally putting the end client first, which is just huge. I mean, it just has to be that way. What I was going to ask is because you guys and I've got kind of my MSP memories and scars and whatnot as well, but you guys are both describing the same things. And, but one of you is in the US and one is in Canada. So it's a bit, we're kind of tapping into something a little bit more universal there on this. And I just wanted to ask you, Lyle, if you serve any clients in the US and or, what you might see as differences between the markets and whatnot.
I don't have any US clients. I do work with an MSP in Washington State, right? So we kind of offset some services together. The biggest thing I see the difference between US and Canada when it comes to mandated security frameworks, if I'm saying that right, is the US is a lot more dialed in on specific things that need to be due for an industry, CMMC, for example, or HIPAA, for example, we follow more of a blanket information security framework for all businesses, and it all relates down to the protection and disclosure of PII. But the Canadian federal government is very good at, as part of the Five Eyes type thing when it comes to more of a global cybersecurity threat system. But when it comes to individual citizens, it's more of a blanket mandate, and a lot of responsibility is put on the provinces. And that's where we see the breakdown is. So for Secure Shield, we did, when I first made the decision to go full on cyber consulting, we kind of made it a mandate early that we would take as much of the US systems and apply it to Canadian businesses as much as possible. Now, because there are similarities, right? Like we don't do like an equivalent to CMMC, for example, because there really is no military industrial complex in Canada, right? That we need to do that. But all our healthcare clients, when we're using our GRC tool, we will apply HIPAA to that Canadian healthcare facility. So at least we have some kind of framework and process we're working with. And, because at the end of the day, if we're talking data sovereignty, for example, well, data sovereignty is data sovereignty, whether it's in the US or Canada. We're just using the questions and the frameworks of the US and applying that to Canadian healthcare facilities, right? Because we don't have one. It all falls within the PIPEDA framework. So, and the Canadian government is working to change that, and I'll give them credit for that, but it's a slow crawl. So we do the best we can to pull US stuff, because at the end of the day, it's about the protection of data and mitigating any form of risk, regardless of what the vertical market is, right?
Right.
And we found that very beneficial, and we'll maybe have a lot of not applicable stuff, right? Or if we're unsure, we'll go that. And then I'll just, touch base with colleagues that I know in the US when it comes to HIPAA, and see how that translates over. So we do it a little bit differently because we're in Canada. But I think at the end of the day, when we're talking data sovereignty, we're talking about mitigating risk, we're all on the same page, right? We just kind of do it a little bit differently.
Do you see any Canadian standards that are higher than US standards that you got to take into consideration?
No, unless you're really working with government, that's when it gets sticky, right? And especially when you're working with mid to large size businesses who work on government contracts, then there's a lot of, it really gets into the weeds, right? It's there's some government contracts, they will not allow a US third party, to work on that company. It's got to be Canadian based. And a lot of times we'll get calls, says, hey, do you do pen testing? No, we don't, but I got a great partner in FR Secure that does, right? Says, oh, we can't use them because they're US based, right?
Gotcha.
Strictly federalized, right? And the client would love to do it, because they have to get this done in order to get their contract renewed. But the federal statute says, no, it can't be US based, right? So FR Secure needs a Canadian office. There we go.
Yeah. Now, is that where it can't be US or needs to be Canadian?
The which, sorry?
Is it that it can't be a US based company, or that it needs to be a Canadian company?
At this point, it needs to be, it'd be like Microsoft, right? So Microsoft's a US based company, but they have the Canadian business and the Canadian presence, Canadian data centers. So an operated Canadian business, right?
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So there's ways to get around that, but there most times, depending on the level of third party support that needs to be done, there's just not a decent Canadian company say that can do that, and they're strictly US based, right? They are only in the US. That can't be used as third party for those specific contracts. And it only comes to effect when it's government, right? If a kind of a government contract, they're really keeping it in the box, which I respect. I could totally understand that.
Do you guys?
Here's
Oh,
a
go ahead.
question that every CVCISO is wondering. How big of a risk do you see in the Prime Minister dating Katy Perry?
You know what? Good for him. Good for him doing that. You know what? He, it's I had no problems with him, and he's just a full blown Canadian citizen now, and he's not the Prime Minister. So if he can latch on to Katy Perry, good for him.
He's not the Prime Minister?
No, he is not the prime minister anymore.
That's how much I guess paid attention.
Yes. We had an election, believe it or not, and he resigned. He's just an average citizen. And
All right.
yeah, he's
living
living the life.
the teenage dream.
Living the teenage dream. That's right.
Are there term limits up there?
Yeah. Well, we have an election every 4 years. So,
But are there term limits to that, or okay?
no, Pierre Trudeau was prime minister for 10 years. So you went 2.5 elections. Yeah,
Gotcha.
we have prime ministers forever, no term limits. We vote him in, he stays. Because we
Okay.
are digressing from IT to politics. Our political system is based on the British monarchy. So it's very different than the US. Very different. All right. You can get two parties come together and force an election tomorrow just by having a non-confidence vote,
Gotcha.
which almost happened, by the way. It was very interesting. It was close.
Would that be the same as when we have recalls down here?
Similar, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's pretty close, right? There's certain things that need to be approved in Canada that needs the majority support from all parties in Parliament. And if the ruling government can't get the necessary votes to pass, say, the budget, which is one of them, that could force an election. It's called the non-confidence vote. So,
Okay.
so we've had our new prime minister for like 6 months, and it was like 2 votes short from forcing an election again. It was interesting. So yeah, it's all based on the British monarchy. So it gets a little interesting.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Hey, the other thing I did want us to spend some time on was Joe had put together she found an article talking about some of the highlighted incidents that happened in 2025, and was going to take some time to kind of walk through some of those, see if there are some trends and things like that. But does anybody else have anything that they want to touch on with regarding US, Canada, Katy Perry, or whatever?
Just that
Did you-
Jordan's very jealous. Sorry,
Yeah.
man. She's off the market.
Yeah, do you want to dive into that a little more there, Jordan? Or
We can unpack that next week. Little teaser.
okay, did you use the word on back with a double entendre there, or just
Is that a Katy Perry poster behind you, Jordan? Straight back?
Yep.
Looks like
That's
one.
my wedding picture with her.
and she gets around?
I wasn't Canadian enough. It didn't last.
We are super nice people up here, so maybe that's why. So they say.
You are.
Nicer than Minnesota? Should we have a nice off?
You're close enough to Canada. You can be partial Canadian if you want.
Really?
There you
All
go.
right.
I'd love to come see British Columbia. I've never been to British Columbia.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice.
Are you a native from there? Or
Yes, I am. Yep, born and
Okay.
raised. I'm in our town in Kamloops. I've been born and raised here. I have 3 kids here, 2 grandkids, and I'm left to work out of town briefly when I first got into university, many decades and decades and decades ago. But yeah, exactly. Found my way back. So it's a nice little place to raise a family.
no, right on. Okay. Joe, do you want to dive into those, and we can share the link that you're referring off of? We'll drop not in the chat, but in the comment section so people can take a look.
Yep, I've got the link in there. I can put it in the other chat.
Let's just make sure Fatima gets it, but it is in the chat here for anybody that wants for us here.
But I'll throw it in the public chat too.
What is the top 15 cybersecurity incidents of 2025?
Yeah, kind of crazy. So we're going to start off with that. I mean, it was a pretty big year for cybersecurity. There were a lot of different kinds of attacks. There were, your threat groups, your data breaches, of course, 0 days. Some stories were a little bit more popular. Some were a little more impactful. But Bleeping Computer put together 15 of what they believe are the most impactful topics of 2025. And the stories are really in no particular order. So I will start it off with the number 15 that they chose, which was the Pornhub data breach.
So these are ranked.
These are not ranked. These are just 15 best stories of the year.
Change the password, Jordan. Change the password.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that site.
So
yeah,
okay,
well,
so the
a lot of
Pornhub
people
one is-
aren't.
I guess what I'm saying is the Pornhub one wasn't the 10th most impactful. Like there could be somebody here on this podcast where it was more impactful than the 14.
Yes. They could have been part of that 94 gigabytes worth of data that's contains over 200 million records of subscribers viewing their search, their download activity, and they're threatening to release it if the demand isn't paid. So it is ransomware by shiny hunters. And they also made the similar disclosures, such as Ashley Madison. So it's a very similar situation.
Oh, yeah. That's back in the day. Holy cow.
Yeah. That's a good story, actually.
How long ago is that now? 5, 6 years? I think.
Well, I think it's longer than
More than
that.
that.
Let that be a lesson to you kids. I mean, the truth will find you out. Careful out there.
So,
well, Jordan,
if
Shiny
you
hunters
happen
will
to
get
have a
you.
premium subscription, I suggest changing your password immediately.
Jordan, when you had
Jordan.
to respond to the Ashley Madison breach, do you remember how long ago it was you had to take the steps that you did?
Am I under oath?
No.
Need the steps.
We are recording, but there is no oath. You're in a safe space,
Look,
limited to the
I
number of
use
words.
fake
Yeah.
names for those things, so then no one will catch me.
That's right. And remember, ABC 1, 2, 3 is
Do you want to share with
I use
people
Andy
what your-
Covert's name usually.
I was going to ask what your username was in Pornhub, just so you can start to deny it now.
It's Andy's big day.
So tell us more about this one, Joe, if there is more.
There really isn't a whole lot of more. It's just that, they say that the breach doesn't involve financial records or credentials. However, I don't know if I believe that. And of course, it's ransomware, so they're threatening to release that data if they don't get paid.
Okay.
But it's
never
really
ceases to amaze me how, that the credential theft, even regardless of the site, how it's amazing how it's still an issue. And I wonder what you would track that down to. Right. Yeah. It could be any company that stores PII information, but I'd really love to know where the breakdown was, and it can't help but think it's consistently the same thing.
MFA,
right?
man.
That's right. MFA and just people clicking on a bad link.
no education, no awareness, slow decision making. And there's a lot of breakdowns that I think could be there. I think a lot of administrative.
Well, and no, I totally agree with you guys. But this doesn't say how they were breached, does it?
It never does it? Seems like they always keep that quiet.
Sometimes, very, very few times does it give you the actual reason or how they got in.
Yeah. Well, and just to your point, Lyle, it's usually something more basic that, everybody's thinking it's going to be this great. Even like what happened at the Louvre, you think it had to be a really sophisticated attack. And then you just find, I think the password was Louvre or something.
As I always say, ABC 1, 2, 3 is not a password.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go to that list of top 10 weakest passwords and use it for inspiration.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. What else you got? What do you got next, Joe? Or you can pick somebody to go over one of these if you want. We can make it kind of a white elephant, sort of.
That sounds like fun. Well, let's talk about some of the outages that happened over the year. There were a lot of outages. We had the DDoS attacks that increased in strength. So Cloudflare, they went from, I think that says here that the largest DDoS attack of the year was at 29.7 terabytes per second. And I think that kind of opened up the door for a lot of attacks. And you know what I wanted to say here, but I think a lot of there were a lot of click fix attacks over the year. They used the fake CAPTCHA challenges with a lot of the videos, and they instructed their victims to copy and paste commands that download and execute malware. So again, it's really the victims kind of ending up infecting their own machines by running malicious PowerShell commands or any shell commands, really, because it could be Linux as well or Mac OS. But I think the click fix social engineering attacks were a big deal.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of hit me with those larger interruptions like you're describing is shedding light on how much dependency there are on certain organizations. When like AWS or Microsoft or Cloudflare, just how impactful those were when one organization was compromised or victimized in some way.
Yeah. And now Cloudflare, now that you mention it, that was traced back to an emergency patch for the actively exploited React to shell flaw. So it seems like everything is it just hinges off of something else, and then it creates another problem, which creates another problem. It's almost like a domino effect.
Totally. Yeah. DNS or an intern.
Yeah,
The
good old
insider
DNS.
threats are a big deal too.
Yeah.
So those insider threats, there was Coinbase. They disclosed a data breach that affected 69,000 plus customers. That led to an arrest of a dirty, rotten former Coinbase support agent. And they helped the dirty, rottens access the systems. So it's a lot of insider information to the hackers. And that included a lot of screenshots. And then scattered, shiny hunters and Lapsus and Scattered Spider all merged together and created Scattered Lapsus Hunters. So now all of a sudden they became this one big organization. And that insider activity with all of that, in fact, it actually impacted a lot of financial organizations. And that was from Finland all the way to Brazil.
Wow.
And a lot of that demonstrated the danger that's posed with employees or former employees who are disgruntled.
And that's funny, that shows, I guess, from a vCISO perspective, mitigating risk perspective, those insider threats. How many systems could you have in place? Well, how many controls could you have in place that would actually prevent that insider threat? And I guess it just goes to show that you'll never eliminate risk, right? But
Right.
you mitigate as much as possible that business impact from an insider threat, like something as simple as disgruntled employee, right? You can, people get pissed off for a variety of reasons, right? And we can talk about onboarding, offboarding procedures and all that, and the disgruntled employee offboard or the firing offboard or whatever. And I think at the end of the day, there'll always be a gap, right? And there'll always be some kind of reactive response to that threat, no matter how many controls or policies you have in place, right? Which leads to more questions on who's responsible again for that risk. We talk about that all the time, right? I would say, the vCISO is responsible, but at the end of the day, who owns the program?
Right. The vCISO is responsible for, making sure you're having those conversations with them, right? Making sure they understand that risk. And, it makes me think about some of the work that you and I've done, Dave, where it's like just a simple tabletop walkthrough with the business owner is saying, hey, if so-and-so was ticked off and was leaving the organization, how much damage could they do? Think about that. And
Sure.
And then you can start preparing that, because you might not be able to eliminate that risk, but thinking through how you'd recover from it, what they could possibly, if they deleted all of their emails and stuff, do you have a 365 backup of that? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah. And I hate to be the one to say it, but, if it's a disgruntled employee, usually there's a reason, or they're being let go or for whatever thing. But another risk that doesn't get talked about a lot that's insider is you could have somebody that's in a awkward or rough financial position and they were otherwise a good person, but now they're more vulnerable. Maybe a spouse got let go. There's a lot of uncertainty about the market and the job market, right now, which could take a good person, make them more vulnerable to make decisions that they otherwise wouldn't have.
And it's important to understand that it really could be anyone. We had an employee cause damage to a client of ours, and she was the sweetest, shyest, just soft-spoken girl. But she didn't get the raise request that she wanted or whatever, and she caused some damage. That the company's still trying to recover from and could have some problems. And it's like everyone was, really? She did it? we didn't see that coming,
Right.
because so many people say, I don't think anyone would do that. So I'm not too worried about so-and-so. I don't know. Still put some things in place.
Well, or minimally, because I remember when we were speaking with one of your clients, and it was just, oh, we're small. Everybody knows each other. And if there's an issue, we would just call Jordan. And it was like, well, let's just take a minute and walk and talk through scenarios. Not so much that we're trying to go after somebody, but let's talk about some scenarios and what the potential ramifications to the organization could be. Doesn't mean we have to, it's just all monopoly money. We're just talking, but let's just have those conversations to think that way and see where those take us. Cool. Joe, you want to sneak in a couple more? And then if we all want, we can try and make our prediction for 2026.
All right. Well, I'll sneak in these last three. Of course, we had the Salesforce data theft. Those attacks, that was a large scale data theft and extortion campaign that was linked to the Shiny Hunters extortion group. That included Google, Cisco, Chanel, Pandora, Allianz Life, Farmers Insurance, and Workday. Those and a bunch others. And it's saying here that the significant component of these attacks involved breaching the third-party SaaS platforms that interface directly with Salesforce.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a supply chain attack that kind of hit a lot of different companies. And then, of course, we've got the zero-day attacks. Those still are a widely used method. And those network edge devices and internet exposed services were primary targets for exploitation with 0 days. We saw a lot of those, especially in firewalls. And then, of course, SharePoint and Windows vulnerabilities. And then, we had consumer and enterprise software that played a role in there with the 7-zip and the WinRAR 0-day flaws. And those exploited in phishing campaigns, and that was their way of bypassing security protections to install malware. And then lastly, of course, the AI-powered attacks. We knew that was coming. We knew it was coming, made number one.
Hour without saying AI.
Yep. And so, that really kind of sped up those exploitation attempts. They relied on those machines to get their spelling right, to get their wording right, to make it look like it was something a little bit more familiar, where it made a lot of people kind of have fatigue in that way of being able to see if that was really fake or not. So a lot of the AI deep fake stuff. So I guess, I don't know, at the end of the year, I'll just go on with my prediction of how I feel it, of what I see is I think that the threat intelligence there out in the world is going to kind of be where teams really need to understand detection. So they need to see what's in their systems. They need to be able to detect a lot of this stuff coming in to their systems. So that's my prediction, is that teams need to be able to detect.
Awareness.
There you go. Situation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who'd like to go next with a prediction?
I think Andy would.
Would actually, yes. I have a prediction that everything is going to get worse. There are going to be more data breaches, more incidents, more just crazy stuff going on, especially with AI and quantum computing. So that is why, coming from 5 CVCISO graduates, you out there should get into the CVCISO program. It's a great program. It teaches you about a lot of different things, risk management, gets you into a whole risk assessment on the S2 platform in the 5th week of classes. It's an amazing time. Let me tell you, I can't wait. Look it up. We got discounts. Come by. We'll have a good time. That's my prediction.
So you predict that it's going to get worse, but we'll have a good time.
But there are good things out there and good programs. If you invest in yourself in the new year, it's just going to get better for you.
Amen. Jordan?
Yeah, my prediction, I'm horrible at predictions, like I said earlier, but I think if I were to give one, it's in the world that I've been kind of living in, which is the CMMC stuff, because that's coming, or not coming, it's here. And so 2026 is going to be a lot of CMMC opportunities for CVCISOs to, it's something you're probably not going to want to avoid. You want to be up to speed on that, because you're likely going to, you're needing to be involved in some way, shape, or form with a client that needs to be CMMC certified. That's my small little prediction.
Fair enough, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, different perspective, I think. I think it was definitely going to get worse. And we can't avoid the AI, the elephant in the room. But I, I think maybe what we should be focusing on more on what, it's important to know what the risks will be. I think it's going to be equally, if not more important for the vCISO or the cybersecurity consultant to really educate their clients and opportunities on the differences between cybersecurity and information security and the laser focus on trying to mitigate risk and the protection of data. Like we said earlier, we can't avoid the risk, but I think it's got to be, my prediction would be a more enhanced focus on that tier 2 vCISO security consultant position to work with clients to help them understand that the risks will be out there. We all know it's going to get worse and it's going to come in different mediums, but I think our focus should be more on that consultancy and making clients aware of the differences between just the tool set and the actual protection of data.
No, right on. Yeah, I was gonna
Bring us home, Dave.
Okay, I had two, and the first one was, that it's gonna get worse before it has a chance to get better. But I realize we all feel that way. I hate to say it, but I think the prediction is I think we're going to see a larger attack on critical infrastructure than we have seen. I'm not saying it's going to be a direct attack, but I think that there's going to be tests on critical infrastructure that ultimately can be used as a distraction for something else. And I really, I'm wrong. So on that bright note,
Happy New Year. Exactly.
Happy New Year.
That was funny.
But,
Woohoo.
no, thank you all. Appreciate it. This has been great talking through everything. And I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all your experiences and your story, Lyle. It's been great. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on. It was always fun coming on. Love
Awesome.
doing it.
And you shall be back.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Cool. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say before
This podcast was brought to you by Dollar Hot Dog Soup.
There you go.
Make a hot dog and wash it down with some soup.
Pillow fights.
Cool.
We won't go there.
Live on Pornhub.